Welcome back to the Brilliant Fertility Podcast. I'm so excited about our guest today, my friend and colleague, Madison Waggoner. Thank you for being here, Madison. I'm really excited. I know I invited you like over a year ago to be on the podcast, so this feels like finally I've pinned you down.
Yes.
And we get to share about all of the brilliant wisdom that you have around Ayurveda and fertility. So, for our listeners, Madison is a compassionate Ayurvedic doctor and natural fertility specialist dedicated to helping women prepare their mind and body for the journey of pregnancy. And what I love about what you do, which I feel like just parallels so much of my work as well, is blending this Ayurvedic wisdom with cutting edge functional hormone science so that people can feel really empowered on their journeys. So, thank you for being here. I'm going to warn for all of our listeners that both of us have our dogs here with us today. They really, really wanted to be present for the podcast. So, if you hear little doggy noises, it just is what it is. It's dog medicine. So, embrace it.
So true. It's good medicine.
It sure is. It's like that unconditional love and safety that all humans crave, even if they don't realize they crave it.
So true.
So I am honored to have you here. And I'm always curious. I don't know that you and I have ever really dived into how you got into this work in the first place. Like, what brought you to Ayurvedic medicine?
There's dog. I'm like doggy jump energy. Yeah, first of all, I'm so excited to be here. And it has been a long time coming. I know you invited me, like you said, over a year ago, and just really excited to be here and, connect with you and talk with you and share more about, our worlds intersect a lot. And I'm really excited to talk about that. But, so, more about me and my stories. So my own health issues is what brought me to Ayurveda. In my early 20s, I was struggling. I didn't have a period for many months. I was struggling with really bad acne, really bad digestive issues. I also had a really difficult relationship with food. And, the doctor recommended birth control as well as Accutane. And at that point, it's like, okay, yes, I'll do it, thinking that I was, really supporting myself. The Accutane helped my skin, and I thought the birth control was helping with my menstrual cycles, which were, very irregular. Come to find out, they weren't actually supporting, right? It was just band-aiding what was happening. So once I stopped Accutane, my acne came back. And right around that same time is when I learned about Ayurveda through yoga teacher training. And I started to learn more about, why digestion is so important and really how to support my unique body type, understanding that, there's different mind body types. And like, how do we really support the individual? Not like, here's this one thing for everybody. And so I started applying those principles in my own life, and I started to feel so much better. And like, I was started to cultivate this, inner radiance and glow, supporting my digestive tract. My skin started to clear. My menstrual cycles, became regular, and I just felt so much better. And I also really, healed my relationship with food, which is so important. That was kind of like the tip of learning about Ayurveda. And for those of you who are not familiar with Ayurveda, it translates to the knowledge or the science of life. I call it the OG holistic healing system. So it's a 5,000-year-old healing science that really supports mind, body, and spirit. And so, as soon as I learned about it, I was like, wow, this is incredible. Like, I have to start studying. So I started studying right away, and I've been studying here in the United States, in India. And I've been practicing since, I think, 2016, 2017. So for many, many years, and have worked a lot with women's health. I became a mom in 2022, and that was a really transformative journey to focus more on, preconception and fertility, and really, getting to the root of what's happening. And that's when I also started studying functional hormone science too. So, motherhood was just a big transition. I think right before our first son was conceived, I was struggling with a lot of digestive issues. And, right after he was born, I developed Bell's palsy, which is facial paralysis. And I think a lot of that was like depletion prior to getting pregnant. And I was able to heal that quickly. Thank goodness. I'm, very, very grateful using Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine to help heal. And then in 2023, we had a near death experience with our son where, we almost lost him. I feel like that really opened me up to this, I've been a spiritual person for a long time, but just this like intersection of life and death and how, there's, it's just such like a precipice. And I feel like we don't talk about that and really like honor the deepness of creating and cultivating life. And, a lot of my focus is on preconception, fertility support too, but really educating like why preconception is so important, not just, in for getting pregnant, for having a good, healthy pregnancy, and then also really supporting, your child and diving into this idea that there's three for conception. There's two parents and baby soul, and I feel like that's so important. In this moment where we weren't sure if he was going to, I could feel his soul. So after he was born, he developed viral meningitis at 5 days old, and I truly could feel his soul deciding if he was going to stay or if he was going to go. And it was so difficult, but it was like, this wasn't up to me, right? I, as mom, called him in, and here he was, and it's like, but this journey was also his too, and he had to make the choice to stay, and that just completely, blew the doors open for, the possibilities. And just doing this, really deep work supporting clients in this
Oh my
really,
goodness.
beautiful
It's
time.
such a powerful story. And also like when you talk about like this is a precipice, and I mean motherhood is an initiation that I think so many of us were totally unprepared for how that would split things wide open. And I know for many of our listeners who are feeling the pressure, the grief of not being mothers yet, like they're aching for that experience, but also I hope that all of you can just take some hope in that you're hearing this all first because it's part of your preparation into conscious parenthood. And so for you to share your experience of, being depleted in that first pregnancy and postpartum, having this near death experience, and like there can be so much discomfort talking about life and death, but like we're in the trenches of this together as threshold workers, as
Yes.
facilitators. And I would love to hear more if you're open to sharing about like what that felt like for you being in communication with your son's soul as he was making that decision, like, do I stay or do I go? Like, what did
Yeah.
that actually look like and feel like and sound like for you?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I feel like I have this intuitive sense, right? And sometimes it's hard to like pinpoint that, but it's just like this felt sense. And I didn't share this part, but what was wild was around the start of my third trimester, I actually had a dream. And prior to our first son too, I had a dream that he was coming. He's like, he's ready. And, we weren't quite ready yet, but like, he was like, hey, I'm coming. And like, there it happened. With our second son, I had a dream at the very beginning of my third trimester that he was going to come and I couldn't stop him. And sure enough, a few weeks later, that's exactly what happened. So at 34 weeks, I got a virus. I started preterm labor. It stopped. I had to get induced. So at 35 weeks, he was born, and then he got sick after that. So, I think there's this way that our children can communicate with us, if we're open to that. But for me, dreams is a really big part. When he was, after he got sick, which he was born at 35 weeks and he was doing really, really well, we were going to take him home, day 5, then he stopped eating. And it's like, okay, something's wrong with him. Like, what's going on? And that's when, we figured out what was going on. But there was just, just this intuitive felt sense of like, it's his, right? It's like, I did everything I could. And his entrance into the world and how things played out was like, this is also his karma. And, I would whisper in his ear, Caden, we need you. I need you. Mama needs you. Your brother needs you. Your daddy needs you. Like, we need you here. That makes me emotional right now. It's been a while since I talked about that, but like how, it's like, we need you. Like, we have to call your soul here because we know we love you. And it was such a difficult experience. Like, wow, like I grew this child, I birthed this child, I might lose this child. But, if that was our journey, that would be our journey, right? Like that's, I believe that souls have, their life experiences. And if that was the experience that he had to have, like, God, that would be really fucking hard. But okay, like that's his, right? So there's just so much surrender in that moment. It was like, there is, all I can do is be here for him. I was very adamant about nursing and giving him milk fresh every time, being around him so that my body, like our bodies are incredible. Like my body can create antibodies, right? Western medicine was keeping him alive, but like what was actually supporting is like breast milk can do that. And so I was very adamant about that and supporting him in the ways that I could. I was putting, he had viral meningitis. There's a practice in Ayurveda to anoint the head with oil, and I was putting breast milk on his head, right, to help support his brain and his nervous system. So, having this toolkit was actually just so helpful for me. And, being able to support him in the ways that I could. And that was like, what can I control? And what do I need to let go of? And focusing on what I could control and, loving on him and, letting the rest unfold, which is a really difficult place to be.
It sounds like an impossible place to be. And
yeah,
yet you had tools that allowed you to handle that with as much, I don't know, I don't even know how you would phrase it, grace and poise and surrender. I mean, surrender truly is that key word here that I think is such a difficult thing to conceptualize. But when you're in the moment and you feel what that feels like, it's like, oh, that's it.
yeah.
And it's both the hardest fucking thing you'll ever do and the most liberatory thing you'll ever do.
Totally. Yeah. I remember my friends were asking, like, how are you doing this? I'm like, I don't have a choice, right? Like my life has prepared me for this moment. And I'm so grateful that I have all of these tools. And, this is it, right? This is just the way that life is unfolding right now. And yeah, just like true, deep surrender. And it's hard, but it's possible. And I think that that's so important to remember too. Like, it is possible. And there's so much freedom that can come from that place too.
Absolutely. It's everything.
Yeah.
And then having that life experience, like how do you feel like it informed your practice and how you support people who are struggling with fertility or just getting curious and leaning into the idea of conscious conception?
Yeah. Yeah. So, really looking at like taking this holistic approach. I think so often we're focused on the body, and yes, the body is very important, right? The body is the vessel, the vehicle that carries baby, and there's physical manifestation that happens, but there's also the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual piece too. So it really is a very holistic calling in of the baby, making sure and Ayurveda has this beautiful framework, and it's Ayurveda is 5,000 years old, so this has been around for a long, long time, and it's like it just makes so much sense. What I love about Ayurveda is the principles make sense, but this idea of cultivating a garden, and there's four main aspects that you need to create a garden, and that is the soil. So what are you going to plant in? What is the quality of the soil? Nourishments, like fertilizing the soil, as well as how are you going to continue to like water or support the soil so it's not too dry, not too wet. Looking at seeds. When we talk about seeds, we're talking egg and sperm, and it is a 50-50. That's really important. And then the last piece is time or timing. And that, that can be, the micro and the macro, but, are you trying at the right time? Like what season of life are you in? What season in the year is it? What's happening in the world, right? And like all of these things are so important to creating life. And I feel like, this really, when you start to dive into it, there's, it can feel, well, one, I want to say that fertility, preparing for pregnancy can feel so nebulous. It's like, what does this mean? I know I should be doing all of these things. And when we boil it down into something that we can really understand, that the mind can conceptualize, I think it makes preparation much easier. Yeah, I'll pause there.
Yes, I think that's a really good place to just kind of expand upon the idea of preparing for pregnancy. And most of the people who come to me have already crossed a lot of T's and dotted a lot of I's, including maybe already having been through IVF, already having unsuccessful embryo transfers, having tried acupuncture, having tried like a little here and a little there, but most of them have not done what I would consider like a truly holistic path to this preparation. And yet they're so wound tightly and burnt out by the journey that it, the rewinding to like, you can't go back to 2 years ago from when they started, but we have to meet you where you are now and calm the mind and the body and the spirit and call in that
Yeah.
safety. So I guess where I'm going with this question is, in the ideal world, at
Yeah.
what point would people start thinking about the preparation for
Yeah.
pregnancy?
Yeah. In a very ideal world, 6 months, a year away from trying to conceive. And there is a process in Ayurveda, there's a sequence that we like to follow. And, going back to this garden analogy, what's this, what are you going to be planting in? What's happening in the soil? And do we need to clear the soil? Do we need to deeply nourish the soil? And I find, in Ayurveda, digestion is so, so, so key. It's the root. So, it's like, we're not what we eat, we are what we digest, right? So we can be eating all the good foods, but we're not actually like digesting and absorbing the nutrition. And there's this beautiful concept in Ayurveda. It's called the 7 dhatus, or 7 tissues in the body. So there's the digestive process, and then there's 7 tissues, and it's like a cascade effect for one tissue to be nourished, and then it goes to the next and the next, and so on. And we're looking at things like, rasa, or we call plasma, rakta, that's red blood cells, mamsa, that's muscle tissue. We're talking about fat tissue and bone tissue, nervous system tissue, and the very last tissue to be nourished is reproductive tissue. And when I first learned about that, I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense, right? There's, if our body is based in survival, reproduction is going to be, it's not going to be prioritized, right? It goes on the back burner. So in too, like reproductive tissue, I think is like the fruit of our essence, right? It's, think about, seeds. It's like that literally is the next, it becomes the next generation. That's exactly what's happening in our bodies. And, so, really focusing on digestion is so key. So that's like the first piece in the sequence, is making sure you can digest something. If you can't, which, candidly, everyone has digestive issues. And I feel like that's really important to address first, because you can be eating all the right things and taking all the supplements, but if you can't digest it, it does not matter. So we start there, we clear, and then we focus on deep nourishment, right? And, with the functional hormone science, like we know that the final maturation, like the most prominent time for eggs, it's like, 90 to 120 days. So like, whatever nutrition is in your body, right? So if you're having digestive issues, your body's not going to be receiving that full nutrition. So we want to clear that first, so that, those last few months prior to conception, you're really, deeply bathing your eggs, your uterus, your uterine lining, and really, blood becomes the carrier for nutrition. But, we want to bathe with as much nutrient dense foods as we possibly can. And, there's certain signs that we look for in Ayurveda that are, let me go back to, so there's the dhatus, the 7 tissues. And after that, we create something called ojas, OJAS. And that is the byproduct of perfect digestion. It is immunity. It is vitality. It is this like strength and radiance. And, when we feel that in our bodies, it's like, when we're feeling healthy and alive and well, that is a sign of fertility too. But again, you can't just get there. It's like there's this step-by-step process to get us there. And there are certain foods and herbs that can really support reproductive tissue and, cultivating ojas. One food that is very helpful for supporting all of the tissues is milk. In Ayurveda, cow's milk is said to be given freely to nourish. So, drinking high quality cow's milk warm with spices is one of the best Ayurvedic remedies that we will use to support in creating, vitality, supporting egg health, sperm health, and just feeling vital.
And I'll pause you there because I am sure there are some people out there who are having a little bit of a freak out
Yeah.
hearing that cow's milk is supportive because they have been fed a lot of information about how dairy is inflammatory and it's, oh my God, I see these goddamn ads on
Yeah.
Instagram that are like fertility killer, fertility killer. And like one of them is like, someone pouring a glass of milk and it's just infuriating because, that's
Yeah.
not rooted in science or individualized consideration. So
Yeah.
I think that's so fascinating that, we have a system that has 5,000 years of evidence saying that, like, oh, yes, indeed, this can be a fertility superfood when used properly under guidance.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. When used properly under supervision. It's funny because I'm like a few years ago, many years ago, it's like dairy, gluten. It's like there's so many things, but it's like going back to this idea with digestion. A lot of the reason is that people can't digest it, right? Milk, lactose can be very difficult to digest, but the thing is that we never fix the root issue, which is digestion, right? Is like we want to start there and to really, in Ayurveda we talk a lot about Agni, Agni, which means digestive fire, and if our fire is low, it doesn't matter what we put on the fire, we're never actually going to burn it down. And I think that image is so helpful to be like, well, how does digestion work? The more that we optimize it, get it really strong, we put food on the fire, it burns. And then, we want to keep doing that process. If we're constantly snacking throughout the day, we're like killing our fire off.
Yeah. And that's so interesting. So I wonder, so say someone comes in and they have a lot of, reported food sensitivities and oh, I can't eat this and I can't eat that. And the list goes on. And where does one start with them in the system of Ayurveda?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, working with digestion. So figuring out what is in the realm of like what's something they can eat. We focus a lot on like cooked and easily digestible foods. That's really important. I used to be a big salad girly, smoothie girly, and someone mentioned this once, like drinking a smoothie is like trying to digest cold cement. Like it's freaking hard to do. And I'm like, smoothies are the superfood, but it's very difficult for your body to break down. On that tangent too, I'm like, same thing with like protein powders. Protein powders, like, get your protein in. Yes, protein's important, but what is the source? What is the quality? That can actually be more difficult for your body to break down and digest. But there's I will tend toward using a few things. So one, mung beans. Mung beans are very easily digestible. So, taking a simple diet for a day, maybe a few days, can actually be incredibly beneficial for resetting your digestive function. And I use the example of a pipe, right? If you're not digesting and your pipe starts to get clogged, we have to do the plumbing or clear those pipes out. And that is true for, deep nourishment to your tissues, also for hormones, right? If something's covered, there's not that clarity of hormonal communication. So when we do that, it can actually be incredibly beneficial. For those who can't eat beans, I will also use meat. So like meat soup, chicken and veggies, just cooked, simple, can be profoundly transformative. And, how do you know, especially with digestive stuff, you can look at your tongue in the mirror and see if there's a coating on your tongue. Maybe you do that too.
Yes, that is one of the main diagnostic tools of traditional Chinese medicine as well.
Yep. Yeah. And it's pretty profound. Like there's so much information you can get from looking at your tongue. It's great. But, look at the mirror and see, do you have a white coating? Sometimes there's a color to the coating, but that's a sign of, again, those like clogged pipes, that things aren't, the communication, the nutrition's not working. So if you find yourself in that place, like I'm doing all these things, but it's not working, the needle's not moving, we need to go back and focus on, clearing and gentle. It's not, it can, there are a lot of cleanses out there that can be incredibly, juice cleanse, for instance, is a great example where that can completely put your digestive fire out. If you put a bunch of water on a fire, the fire goes out. Same thing with your digestive system. But if we strategically take foods that are very nourishing, very easily digestible, the body gets a break. So it's not focusing on digestion and can go and do some clearing and some plumbing.
Yeah. I love bringing up the juice cleansing because I remember, I think I must have been a third year medical student, and like as a class, we had all watched some documentary that like we were like, oh my God, we all need to be like vegan juice cleansing 24/7. And so I was in the midst of doing this juice
Yeah.
cleanse. And I went to see my acupuncturist and he felt my pulses and he looked at my tongue and he was like, what have you been doing? And I was like, I'm like maybe 5 days into this juice cleanse. And he was like, oh, no, 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 no. Go home, eat cow. And I was like, oh, tell me more. And he was like, well, everything that you're putting in your body is just cold, 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 cold. It's impossible to digest. And he was very grateful that he caught me 5 days in instead of like the full 3 weeks that we were all supposed to be doing. He was like, no, go get a roast, slow cook it, put some root veggies in there. And I was like, oh, okay. I have some learning to do here. And
Yeah.
and yes, I mean through my additional training with TCM and hearing you talk about the way Ayurveda utilizes nutrition, it sounds like we really have something to learn from these ancient masters.
I know. There's something like, there's just something about it that makes a lot of sense. And I think I really love that because it can simplify things that feel so nebulous or so complex to just make it very understandable and very digestible. Um,
Literally
for
and figuratively.
yes, yes. And there's just something about that that's also so empowering, right? Like medicine, fertility can feel so disempowering. And when we start to understand, our bodies are unique. So some of us are going to have more fire or, more earth or more water. And when we understand that and can use foods, use the qualities of foods as medicine, so much can unlock for us, right? And it's like, for some people, they might be able to get away with having more salads. For those who are what we call more Vata type, have a lot of, air and space, their digestion's irregular, they tend towards dryness, toward anxiety. Having like salads and smoothie is, poison. It can be poison, literally, right? And I think that's really important. Is like anything can be medicine, anything can be poison. It really depends on how it's used.
Yeah, so you mentioned the types, and
Yeah,
that's something I've always been really curious about.
yeah,
So we have the three types within Ayurveda, right? But
yeah.
you've also identified that there are fertility types as well. How are you is evaluating for those types? What are you looking for to help identify that?
Yeah. So essentially, understanding the elements again and how they can manifest in your body. So um, earth and water is one type, and we call that kapha, Kapha. And kapha types are generally going to be larger boned, larger eyes, like thick, full hair. As far as cycles, they can be a little bit longer. They might notice that their digestion's a little bit slower, feeling like a little bit more sluggish. Also, yeah, I'm like, what else to share? Let me go to pitta. So pitta is mostly fire with a little bit of water. But pitta types are generally, medium bone, can be more athletic, more muscular. They can be more fiery, so like firing personality, very like goal oriented, very directed. Here's what I'm doing. They can tend toward like rash, redness. Menstruation can be more like more burning, can be like bright red. And generally, pittas can be like clockwork with menstrual cycles. And then vata type. So vata is air and space. That's Vata. And that relates to, again, well, we have the larger bone, the medium. And so vata types are going to be like more, thinner bone, thinner eyes, thinner hair, maybe tending towards dryness. And cycles can be irregular. So we think about air and space, how that can have more irregularity. Um, yeah, and menstruation can be more scanty. So we're just seeing, less blood flow. So just understanding your body type can help you, bring hormones into balance, eat foods that really nourish your body type. And again, we're focusing on qualities, which I think is really different than just general like eat healthy advice.
Yeah, and I think it can also apply to, say, you have someone come in with the Western diagnosis of PCOS, right? And they're given this blanketed advice. You need to take metformin and you'll need ovulation induction and, blah, blah, blah. But then you might
Yeah.
have someone who comes in with that lean type PCOS
Yep.
who would be more on the Vata pattern, or you could have someone who has the more stereotypical appearance of PCOS who might be on the more Kapha pattern.
Yep.
Is that
Yep.
okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I
And
think that's so important because like you can come, someone can get diagnosed with something, but the way that it manifests can be very different based on, bio individuality too. Like you're talking about, like PCOS is a great example of that.
yeah, and I'm sure it applies to so many other conditions within women's health and menstrual patterns and fertility patterns.
Yeah.
So when someone comes to see you, like what's the first step? Like what does that actually look like on their journey using Ayurveda with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, doing just a complete intake, right? And really understanding that everyone is a unique individual, right? And like life story really plays part into that. And so really understanding like, the mind, body, spiritual aspects of an individual and their life and what's brought them to, this moment and, their health patterns, etc. But a lot of times, digestion is the first place that we will work, making sure that digestion is clear. And then really focusing on nourishment and nutrition. Herbs, definitely use a lot of herbs too. There's such a variety of herbs, to doing the clearing, and then focusing on deep nourishment and understanding what's going on hormonally as well. Um, yeah, but that's like the general framework. And again, understanding, I think what's so important is like my initial consultation is 2 hours where I really sit with somebody and understand them as a unique individual. Looking at tongue and feeling pulse and just asking a lot of questions. It's like, what do you do first thing when you wake up in the morning? How are you eating your food? Are you sitting to eat? Are you eating on the go? Are you skipping meals? What's your sleep like? What time are you sleeping? Are you waking up in the night? How much are you urinating? What do your bowel habits look like? What is the consistency or quality of your bowel movement? So it's really getting this in-depth understanding and looking at these patterns of like qualities, like I've mentioned quite a few times. We can see that like the dryness of the vata can show up in many ways, right? On the skin, bowel movements, menstrual cycles. So we just start to see these patterns and really support from that like deep root place.
That's really beautiful. I love a good root system and not just the way the wellness industry is throwing that word around like there's no meaning to it anymore, which makes me feel sad about the
Yeah.
state of our world and the wellness industry in general. So
Yeah.
being able to highlight the work that you're doing, which is truly root oriented, feels very aligned with my mission of helping these souls come to the planet in a way that allows them to do their best work here.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good segue into like really biting into the concept of conscious conception,
Mm-hmm.
which I know you and I have talked about and have nerded out about quite a bit. But what does that mean to you? Because I feel like all of us maybe have our own orientation towards that term.
Yeah, totally. And I think there's so many definitions, and you can come up with whatever definition resonates with you. I would say for me, conscious conception is like consciously preparing mind, body, and spirit for welcoming new life. So we've talked about some of the physical things that we just mentioned, and bringing body into balance so that ready for conception. There's the mental piece too, as we talked about at the very beginning of our conversation, that motherhood is a big portal to walk through, and I feel like we aren't, it's like you just have a baby, like you just get pregnant and have a baby, and it's like, wait, like there's so much that's happening for mother, And same thing with father too. And I feel like we don't often talk about that. Like it's this huge transformation, this big identity shift. And like, how are we preparing for that? After the birth of our first son, I had this like huge identity shift. And I'm like, I felt so unprepared for it. And yes, it's like, how do we have conversations and prepare? Like, what does that look like? And then, the spiritual piece too is like, there is this physical manifestation of our world, but there's also this like spiritual soul side of calling life in. And gosh, there's so much to discuss around that, but how are we really truly honoring that? And, I think, the state of the world, I feel like it feels really dire at some, right now things feel really tough. And I feel like that's important, is like sharing this message. I think when we're conscious about things, it's like we want to take care of our planet. We want to take care of the people in our community. We want this world to be peaceful, to be loving, right? It's like love is this all pervasive feeling. And how do we call souls into this world who, want that, and like ready to hold that up, right? And like, this is that consciousness that we can bring. Is in Ayurveda too, there's this idea, Garbha Sanskar, which is, the energy of which you're bathing your womb in. So like during pregnancy or even prior to pregnancy, and what kind of energy are you calling in, right? That is your baby's first home. It's like, so often we think about, I'll focus on what I'm eating when I'm pregnant, but it's like, hey, your eggs are getting all of the information, the nutrition, like the DNA is being set months before conception. So,
Yeah.
There's this consciousness that we bring even to like egg cells and sperm cells. And the more conscious that we are in mind and body, the more that the egg is being bathed in that consciousness. And same thing with womb, right? That you are creating this energy, and also, this invitation. How do we, instead of forcing something, how do we create the invitation, right? If you had a dinner party and you like force people to come, like that wouldn't feel good, right? Like, what if you had a dinner party, like, hey, I'm doing this really cool thing. It's going to be so fun. I'm going to feed you. I'm going to keep you warm, and it's going to be incredible. And like, I'm going to invite you to this thing. It's like, oh, that sounds way better, right? And how do we do that? How do we bring this energy in to preparing for pregnancy? And I feel like I think this is like a really, a different conversation and concept to bring, is like, why is this so important? And how do we bridge this like East and West to be like, well, scientifically, here's what's happening. Here's why it's so important to support your egg health, right? You're literally creating, the DNA of your child months before you conceive. And, that is setting their foundation. And also, not just the next generation, but like generations. There's research that literally generations are impacted in that few month window before conception. But, also that like energetic, consciousness piece too, is like, how are we creating a really warm, welcoming space for our child?
Yes. And my conversations around this have shifted maybe more in the last few years as well. As I think for me, starting off in the holistic world, there was a stronger emphasis on the physical and the mental, and more so in the last, I would say, 5 to 6 years, there's just been this undeniable pull towards addressing the emotional and the spiritual. And I think in the past, I was more focused on like, how do we protect your emotions? How do we protect your energy? How do we create this little bubble of frequency for that invitation? And for me now, at least, that has shifted a bit, as it's just become like everything is so in our faces that to create that bubble is almost feels dishonest. It almost feels untrue. And so that reality of how do we navigate the inviting new life in while we are also facing the deepest evils of humanity, and trusting that these souls have purpose and that they know what they're getting into. But how can we prepare as parents, as communities, as villages in a way that allows them to come do their best work and be loved and be bathed in love?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's, you know, there's reality in that, right? We can have this pie in the sky situation. I feel like, parenting, motherhood has been that, right? It's like, it's the start of this is experiencing such extremes, right? We're like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing. And wow, excuse me, this is like, the biggest mirror I've ever had on myself to, to look at your patterns and
Yes.
see what comes up. And I think that that's really important. But I think there's also like, that is the spiritual evolution. That this is the spiritual side of things, is like, life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us to grow into this deeper evolution of human being. And to know that darkness exists, of course it does, and it always will, right? It's like, we don't want to get siloed into there's only this goodness and this light. Like, the darkness is there too. And we have to hold both with reverence and with love. And there's, I don't know, like this idea of a soul contract, right? That I'm entering into this soul contract, and like the invitation and the acceptance of the invitation for baby to be like, okay, those are the parents that I'm going to choose. I don't know if you know much or around, I mean, astrology, but particularly Jyotish or Vedic astrology, which is pretty profound. Jyotish it's literally the science of light, and understanding how, these larger celestial bodies have different energies. And, when you look at a birth chart, it's like when you're born, these planets are in different places and they impact different parts of, aspects of your life. And it is profound. I'm not a Jyotishi. I don't read charts, but, there are a lot of wonderful people who do, and who will specialize in like fertility readings too, to understand like what are the energies for you at different times. But I'm going to weave this back to my story, but with our son, after he was born, I had his chart read, and like his initiation period was the first 18 months of his life. That was literally an initiation period. And it absolutely was, right? How things played out is like, this is what this is what he chose. This is how things manifested. And, he had to make the decision, right? And his, not by chance, but his name's Caden, and it means warrior, right? Like we couldn't decide a name. He was born, and then it's like, okay, this seems appropriate for him, So, but it's, I think that there's also, there are these bigger energies at play, but a lot of, for all of us, right, our souls come here to learn, in the university of life. Like, we literally are here to learn and to grow.
Yeah. I want to sit with that just for a minute, because I think we need to remember sometimes how much wisdom there is, even in a tiny little infant who's only been here for 5 days, and really trust that wisdom and the wisdom of our souls having come here at this time in this place.
Which, and that, that like soul deep trust it's hard, right? It is hard. And I think like that is life, right? And like, how do we, sit in that? I think so many of us can try running from it. And instead of running, like, what does it feel like to just sit, right? To sit in it, to be in it.
Oh, I think people are absolutely running from that. They are running wild, and the sitting in the discomfort,
Yeah.
the identifying and processing of the feelings that we feel, the shame, the guilt, the anger, the fear, that's a part of it. And it's like at the risk of slowing down and feeling, people are freaked out by that. Not
Yeah.
all people, but
Yeah. A lot of people.
the mass of humanity appears to be trending towards that right now.
Yeah.
And to be a practitioner who asks
Mm.
people to consciously slow down is like, whew, all right, how do we set people up for this paradigm shift? Because we're going to have to get real comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it takes, it takes time. And I think that's important, right? We can't force, right? We can't force the nervous system, but we create the space and we invite and allow the unwinding. But it takes, safety in our bodies. I think what's really interesting about Ayurveda is a lot of the practices are body based, but there's this idea that, we're also, there's this consciousness, right? There's the physical body. There's what we call five koshas, or, 5 layers to a being. And there's the physical, there's the energetic, the pranamaya kosha, the mind, the mental body, the manomaya kosha, the jnanamaya kosha, the, oh my gosh, why am I blanking on the word right now? Like the intuitive body, like, like this deep wisdom body. And then there's the spiritual body, and they're not connected. And I think, or they're not connected. They're all connected. They're not disconnected. And I think that's so important to remember is, we are complex beings. And, when we work in one area, other areas will shift too. And I find, physically in my work, I've been practicing Ayurvedic medicine for many years, but when the physical body is in a state of balance, there's way more capacities to start to work in these deeper layers. But if our body is uncomfortable, right, you can't, it's sitting up straight in a meditation with like no back support can be torture, legitimate torture. Like, cross legs, backs, spine long, because our bodies can scream at us, right? And when we first focus on the body, get the body in a comfortable place, then we have this capacity to go to these higher levels of consciousness, right?
Just that it's all connected, right? Is that idea that we cannot separate the physical, the mental, the emotional, the intuitive, the spiritual bodies. Like they are all like they're just part of one being. And yet most of us have grown up in this system of Western medicine where not only are we not even addressing the mental and above, we are compartmentalizing the systems within the body. You have an IST for everything, a gastroenterologist and a reproductive endocrinologist and a neurologist, and you've got like all of these different subspecialties of the different organs of the body, but like the organs are also communicating with each other too. And I feel like it's such the metaphor for even like what we are dealing with in humanity, where everything is just separated. We're not looking at this as a collective. And so when we can look at our body, our beingness, our connectedness as not separate, then we can go deeper, we can get different results, we can defy the odds in the fertility game where someone's been given this 2% chance of conception, but no one's ever addressed any of what we've talked about over the last 45 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so important where, hey, let me just get him because he's just on one right now. Hang on. Okay. Oh
we're gonna need to see Franklin. You know that for people watching on YouTube, they're just gonna be like, we need to see the Franklin.
Okay, he's cute. He's a little black fluff ball. I'll try to get him over here. Yeah, and I mean, Franklin, come here. You want to make your debut? Come here. He's like, no. I can screen him, show him via the screen. There we go.
Hi. You're okay.
He's just a little fluff ball. But yeah, and I think there's evolution, right? Like I just talked about, like it can start in the physical, but as as we build on the foundation, there's this capacity to hold more, right? we're not ready to do really deep nervous system work when our body's fried, right? And so it takes this like gentle layering approach to go deeper and deeper. And, thinking about consciousness and calling in conscious beings, it's like, we also have to raise our vibration. But as we continue to do that, as we continue to have these conversations and to bring this up and understand why this is so important, right? We start to raise awareness, raise consciousness of the collective. And I think that that's really important. But, I know you and I talk a lot about frequencies and like how that is so important too. And, how are we continuing to bring awareness to this? I think that's a really big piece too, is just being aware that this is possible. And how do we continue to support this evolution as individuals so that our collective can continue to be supported too.
Amen. Well, Madison, how do people find you? How would someone begin working with you if they felt that tug towards exploring Ayurveda with you?
Yeah. So my business is Shri Wellness. That's my website. So Shri Wellness, SHRI wellness.com. You can head there, and I do discovery calls. So you're welcome to book a call and we can talk and see if it's a good fit to work together.
Awesome. And we will link your website in the show notes. And we also have your fertility types quiz to link in the show notes, which I love a good quiz. It's just, it's like the little curious mental body that's like, ooh, what am I? And begin to have a little bit more understanding about what your body patterns are telling us. So I will link that as well. And just I want to say thank you on so many levels. First of all, thank you for being the type of practitioner who is so deeply curious and open for collaboration. So even just the way that you reached out to me at this point a couple of years ago, from this place of I'm so curious, we have a mutual acquaintance, and I'm so curious about what you do, and I would love to collaborate. I fucking love that energy. And I love that about you, and I think that is also part of moving the collective forward. So I appreciate you. I'm so grateful for the work that you do and the way that you approach fertility and hormone health and women's health and collective health. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for being you. Thank you, Franklin, for being here as well.
Yeah. Thank you for all that you do too, and for providing spaces and conversations. You are doing the work, right? You are raising the consciousness and educating and sharing this. So thank you.
Well, we're doing it together, sister.
Yes.
All right, listeners, if you got something out of this episode today, just take a moment to pause, reflect, let us know. Find us on social media at Dr. Katie Rose, at Shri Wellness, and just let us know what you took away from this episode. You can also leave a review or rating on your favorite listening platform. And just please know that if you feel like you have tried everything, I guarantee you there is a path that has not been explored, and perhaps Ayurveda is the path for you. All right, until next time, take care. Sending so much love to all of you.